Welcome to the channel, tourists and loyalists. I am starting a new progression on my game dev journey for various reasons. You see, I worked on the code in sprints. Like, some days I would wake up and work until the feature I wanted was finished. Like, basically all day. And then I would take long gaps where I either didn't do anything or worked on assets. It would then also take a very long time to try and edit it into a digestible format with added voiceover, which stresses me out, by the way, talking alone into a microphone. I would have to record things like multiple times to get it right. The only downside is that I have to set up this system manually, which I've already done from server to client. Actually, I have a workaround I'm using right now. I'm listening to the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack. But now, you see, I can start again. But not from scratch. It's New Game Plus, with already made assets, vision, and a brand new comp sci consultant.
I didn't agree to this.
So let me recap some of the assets I have to work with, and some I haven't covered in videos yet. So I have the studio open here. I have some buildings here that I haven't actually showed off in a video yet. Like, I looked at buildings from like the 60s and 80s, from different parts of Europe and Asia. These are more unique, based on like a meat on a bone kind of thing. And for like a barrack situation, right? I made lungs. Oh, it won't actually let you do anything if you're there alone. There we go. So this is what the client looks like. Some simplistic stylized UI. Yeah, and I can move my thing. There's no like attack animations or anything. Right click menu, click it. I have this really cool animation, I guess. All of these are based on actual designs. So this is a BMP3, and then this one is like, I imagined if they would put a railgun on the BMP3. This truck design, I forgot exactly what it's inspired by. It's parasitic. This is like a Sherman tank that's got like the alien inside it. This is like, I thought about like an octopus playing with a toy, except the toy is an army bomber. There was this app on my phone called Medley. It's what I use for compositions, but I switched to a better phone, so now I can't edit them. I downloaded everything I made though. Enjoy listening to a few seconds of my noob tracks. I mean, before my superior amateur tracks. I think you've had enough. But it was around this point when I had basically learned how to make a musical composition. That is, that a track needs to have an artistic intention, which separates it from slop. All of these tracks I made were slop. Now maybe you could argue that the intention was to get better at music or to make an actual track, but that wouldn't serve as a proper artistic intention unless it was a pro trying to make a beginner style piece. But each of the following tracks I'm now going to show you were crafted with artistic intention. So even if they aren't good, there are themes I was trying to evoke. The misaligned melody, the irregular drum beat, the uncanny instrument, which sounds like a piano, but is actually a piano that I turned the pitch slider all the way down for. I made this to be unsettling but ampy. A spider skirmish, if you would. The feeling I had was like finishing your first painting, not when you were little, but when revisiting the activity years later. It doesn't have to be good, it just has to be perfect. And I accomplished exactly what I sought out to do. I rode this high into making a powered up version of this track. Behold. No breaks, big melodic jumps, lots of bass. I wanted it to feel like an entire colony was crashing down on you. It's incredible how much effort I put into a piece that would probably prevent you from falling asleep, taking inspiration from any piece I thought sounded intimidating enough, like Cynthia's theme or Insomnia. I will spare you the rest of the piece and give you a few seconds of the other tracks I made before continuing with the video. The plan is simple. By the end of this video, create and finish a core gameplay loop. What does that mean though? The game has to end, sure, but what else? I think it's time to cash in our consultation. The player has to feel a sense of progress during a game. That means interaction, feedback, and objectives. In my opinion, tech trees are a good way to add a sense of progression to a game, but they risk being linear, overwhelming, and adding a lot of time to the length of the game. So maybe not in a match. But this got me thinking about the length of a game. I don't want games to be too long, so what about finite resources? Once they run out, one player has to push for it to end. So I came up with these new map objectives. All of these objectives can be captured by one player or one team, and they do not respawn. First of all, the maps will not be procedurally generated. There may be a capital building and or some number of outposts, and capturing all of one of these objective types will cut off the enemy team's source of income, because they'll have seemingly failed their mission, and they will be given the option to surrender or abandon, which they might take immediately if they're getting steamrolled, or if they have a resource advantage because the enemy team did some risky maneuvers, sacrificing something, they can try to recapture. I would say the game should auto-end 2 or 3 turns after the objective has been taken and failed to be taken back. The garage is a one-time building. Once it has been captured with a unit, your unit will be pushed aside and a new heavy unit will be spawned under your command, and then the garage will disappear. Finally, the embassy. Once it has been captured, it will provide you with extra income and will be fortified, preventing recapture by enemies. However, you must protect it from enemies, because they can destroy it, providing them with a one-time income boost. The first thing I did when I opened the studio was switch to a deeper sky, which is nicer on the eyes. I then thought about what I want to do with the grid terrain. In my previous progression, a large amount of complexity was added because of some data types losing their format when transferred between server and client.
This is what a vector 2 index looks like, and here's the same index after sending it to the player. 2 points which should be the same are not. As a workaround, I wrote 2 functions, one which converts from vector 2 to strings, which are completely fine, and another which converts strings to vector 2 to do vector maths easily.
Which meant needing constant conversions and double checking in errors. Kind of like how in 1999 NASA lost their Mars climate orbiter because of some incorrect units. This time I went for a linearized grid such that each tile has only one number, where you can go left and right in increments of 1 and up or down in increments of the grid width. It took a little bit of troubleshooting since I didn't realize that it didn't work correctly starting from 0. So it starts from 1, and then I made it look like a chessboard. Cause why not? This grid would have 3 dimensions, where each type of object would be on a discrete Y level. You know what this empty grid needs? A map editor! I completely skipped this on my previous progression and just made random terrain. It would have been way overcomplicated with the system in place. I tried to keep it simple. A self-contained map editor with one script monitoring the buttons and storing that information in string value objects, and another script monitoring the mouse inputs and reading that information. Once that was done, I crafted the concept buildings from earlier using my previous assets and placed them into a new category. Fun fact, the model move to command does not allow clipping, which might be useful later. After fixing all that, I moved the demolish button outside of categories and added a new grid button which constructs a new grid of any size, and a save button which replicates the map on the server. Also, my Roblox studio tried to take me hostage. After that, I made it so you can toggle the map editor on or off. I didn't like the way the tiles looked, so I changed them a bit, and then I made a default test map. The next thing I need to be able to do is select and move units. I copied over some UI assets and got working on scripts. The grid works in a hierarchy, with only a specific type of map object on each layer. Every render step, a ray is cast, which can only see the virtual grid, which exists as every position on the map. Then it will set the value of pointing at to the terrain at that position, or if there isn't one, the virtual grid square, When the mouse is clicked, the position of pointing at is taken and compared to the value of selected object. Then it will search that position for the highest hierarchy, unless the two values are in the same position, in which case it will look for the object with the next highest hierarchy, and deselect if there is none, unless a terrain tile exists, in which case it will stop there. Then I created a separate script to check when these values are changed, and apply the corresponding selection box effect. So now we've set this up. A fully functional map editor with the ability to store the entire map as a single variable, and a way to process user inputs on a map that was created using that exact map editor. Now we need to project those inputs into action. I added units to the map editor, and then I made a new script to translate the changing selected object into map actions, such as moving units around. I also made the map editor even more robust, except somehow I managed to break it during the demonstration. It just stopped working. I didn't... It now has a load button which turns the map into a map info variable, and then replicates it back into the world on the client. Which not only means you can edit maps that have already been made, but paves the way for some form of map browser in the future. The next thing I need are contextual actions. For example, if the unit is on a building that can be captured, then you can capture it. I started by restructuring the selection UI, and I added a big red deselect button for quality of life. In the center of the screen, there would be a new container for contextual buttons, which would appear or disappear. I set up the logic in the action handler to send a signal to show these buttons in specific contexts. If a unit is selected and on the same tile as a building, it will show a capture button. If a building is selected without a unit occupying it, it will show the build button. With print statements on every outcome, I not only got it working, but fixed some previously unknown bugs. First, before giving the buttons functionality, there needs to be a server-side script to receive user actions. The script copies information it receives from the player to then move the unit on the map. The unit gets moved twice, immediately when the player sends the command on the client side, and after a short delay, the action is copied on the server. This means that the player will not feel like they're lagging that badly, even on 300 ping. And then I copied a function from the map editor to make the build button instance a new unit on the building, which gave me the idea of refactoring static variables and common functions into a single module script. This also made it easy to make units spawn with new metadata, like which player owns them, without swapping the function everywhere. And so I added a player stat called requisition, which will go up with income, which will increase with buildings. Then I added an owner object to all units and buildings, and an income object to buildings. The script will go through all the buildings and add income corresponding to its owner. This allowed me to implement the capture button, and add a new temporary claim button for units. As you can see, we can now select anything without actions, and our money is steady. Now it can be moved. Capture the building, money is going up, and we can use the building action because we own it. Now all I need to do is make building a unit cost requisition and... Wait. Is that a game loop? Does that mean it's the end of the video?